All right, what's up, guys? So what we're talking about with the transition of American history, right? We're kind of at that period where we're past Reconstruction, right? And we see all that massive corruption that takes place during Reconstruction. The country's still fractured, right? And then you couple that with the Industrial Revolution, which you're seeing improvements in technology, science, advancements in agriculture that we haven't seen before. So the entire landscape of America is shifting at this point, right? You're seeing the emergence of these massive companies, and they're able to pretty much dominate the entire market, right? There's a saying, it was the best of times and the worst of times. And it really was in that sense. We'd never seen such advancements in technology, science, medicine, agriculture. So it was the best in those aspects. But at the same time, who was getting rich off of this? Were everyday people like you and I getting rich during this time period with these advancements? No, it's going to be these big, massive corporations, these people like JP Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, right? And they're going to emerge as these titans of industry, but they're pretty much going to control the market. And at times, it's going to be some of the worst conditions for humans up to this point in history, right? We talked about the tenements, right? The housing projects in New York City, the slums, all that stuff that Jacob Riis exposed. You guys remember that? Yeah. So for some people, like there's wealth that nobody has ever seen before, but then there's also poverty that nobody's ever seen before. So that period is kind of called the Gilded Age, right? Which was quoted by Mark Twain. Gilded means it has like the facade or the cover. It looks like it's golden, right? A lot of jewelry, like fake jewelry, is gilded, right? Where it's just regular metal, but it's dipped in gold, so it looks like gold. But is it really worth anything? No, because it's a veneer. It's just a cover, right? It's only on the outside that it looks golden. On the inside, it's really worthless. And that's what this time period is. Then we're going to see the progressive era come out of this, right? People like Jacob Riis, Ida B. Wells, Booker T. Washington, right? People that are going to look to change things for, blacks living not only in the South, but in the North, right? For immigrants, right? For farmers, right? Because you see these big bonanza farms come in and the railroads, and they put the squeeze on the little farmers and make it really difficult for them to do anything. And there's no legislation in place because the rise of these monopolies came quicker than the laws could catch up with them. We see it in our lifetime with, the internet and technology, right? Like with, how these companies like data mine, where they use cookies to see what we're doing and then sell it to other companies, right? Like this is all new technology so there's no laws for this. Same things happening during this time period, right? So there's another expression: does the man make the times, or do the times make the man? So we're going to be talking about Teddy Roosevelt, his cousin, actually fifth cousin, who's later going to be president during World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You could make the argument that the times made the man, right? Franklin Roosevelt wouldn't have been the man he was if he wasn't president during not only World War II, but the Great Depression, right? The other could be said of Teddy, where Teddy's going to make the times. Theodore Roosevelt, our 26th president, really kind of shapes the direction the country is going in, right? So we're going to take a look at that because he kind of crosses all those barriers. You can check him off in the Industrial Revolution, right? The Second Industrial Revolution, the Gilded Age, the Progressive Age, right? Into the events that lead us into World War II. So he's this central figure right at 1901 to 1909. He's president. And this is where we're going to see America become the superpower, the competitor with Europe that we are today. All right, I'm going to share my screen, guys. Excuse my million tabs open here. All right, so Theodore Roosevelt is our 26th president, right? He's going to follow William McKinley, and he's going to be the most dynamic president since Lincoln. All right, give me a second, guys. All right, I'm going to start you with a little excerpt from a speech he did. This is from 1910. He's no longer president at this point. He goes on a big safari trip in Africa, and then does a speaking tour of Northern Africa and Europe. And this is an excerpt from a speech he gives in France in 1910 called Citizenship in the Republic. This is an excerpt called Man in the Arena, okay? And then we're going to kind of break it down. So just everybody give this a listen. This is inspiring. This is what they play in locker rooms before big games to pump people up. This is one of the greatest speeches ever written, and people ate it up. Everybody loved it.
The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer.
I'm getting goosebumps right now just
There are many men who
listening to
feel
it.
a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt.
And we're all guilty of this. We're all guilty of taking a twisted pride in cynicism, right? Criticizing the way others do things that we don't attempt to do. You know, every Monday I say what Carson Wentz should have done. You know, it's real easy to be the Monday morning quarterback, right? Or the backseat driver. My bad. Oh. All right, let's try this again. I won't talk this time. All right, let's try it a third time.
The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer. There are many men who feel a kind of twisted pride and cynicism. There are many who confine themselves to criticism of the way others do what they themselves dare not even attempt. There is no more unhealthy being, no man less worthy of respect than he who either really holds or feigns to hold an attitude of sneering disbelief toward all that is great and lofty, whether in achievement or in that noble effort which, even if it fails, comes to second achievement. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
His place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I mean, you guys see what he's saying there, right? That there's a nobility and honor in attempting and failing, opposed to being the one that just sits back and criticizes what he sees before him. So whether you try something, whether you fail or succeed, there's more nobility in that than there will ever be in criticizing and sitting back and hanging on the bench. And they really do. Like this, like people have this tattooed on them. They have it, you know, they read it before like big games. You know, this was written over 100 years ago. Oops. Am I playing it again? Sorry, guys, I'm a little choppy on this. I'm very used to PowerPoint. I'm just starting to get into Google Slides now. All right, so an overview. He's going to be our 26th president from 1901 to 1909. He's really going to, like I said before, he's going to set the pace for America and really kind of define and carve out what kind of country we're going to be. What is our role going to be moving forward in the world. Because remember, the world's getting smaller and smaller, right? Like globalization, we talked about that, is happening where the economies and the diplomatic relations of all the countries of the world are being intertwined. Like we can't kind of sit back anymore and just be this isolated nation that does our own thing in the corner. Like if we want to emerge, we need to be involved on a grand stage. He's going to be the youngest president in history. JFK, John Kennedy, is the youngest elected. He's actually going to get in a different way. Anybody want to take a shot? If Teddy Roosevelt's the youngest president, how can JFK be the youngest president elected? Somebody take a stab at it in chat. What do you guys think? How could he become president if he wasn't elected? Nothing? Well, what happens if the president, something happens to the president where he can't, who takes over? Yeah, good. Teaver, good job. Yeah, he was the vice president, right? And McKinley is going to be killed very early into his second term, and Teddy Roosevelt's going to become the president, and he's almost excited about it. Like they said at his inauguration, he was fighting to hold back the joy. This guy was very power hungry. Think of like Trump with without the negativity that came with him, all the, I'm not going to get into it, but like this dude's like a big mouth, a power hungry guy, but he's kind of the real deal. He walks the walk and he's incredibly charismatic. People love him. Except he's going to be like the real champion of the little guy, the common people. Okay, he's got a massive personality. He is a media ham. He actually makes journalists follow him around. Like if there was Twitter back then, he would be all over it. He's going to be known as a trust buster. So he's actually going to break up these big companies, these JP Morgans, these John D. Rockefellers, these giant titans of industry that basically control the entire market. He's going to go after them, which had never been done before. Remember, during the corruption days of Reconstruction and the Gilded Age, these politicians are working for the big companies. Teddy's going to be working for the little guys, and he's actually going to go after these big companies. He's a conservationist. He loves nature. He's actually going to set aside like 230 million acres of federally preserved land, which had never been done. Congress is actually going to try to write a law that says he would be like, oh, this place is beautiful. That's a federal park. You can't develop on that. Oh, this mountain range, I love it. Federal mountain range. Congress is actually going to write a law to stop him from having the power to set aside this land. And the day before they sign the law into effect, he sets aside another 16 million acres of federally preserved land. Okay. He is a warmonger. He wants the United States to have a war to get us to the next level. He believes in having a very strong army. He is somewhat of an imperialist. He thinks that, Europe shouldn't be the only one taking all these territories, right? And at the same time, he's going to win the Nobel Prize for Peace. So before Teddy's time, there's this thing called Monroe Doctrine, right? Basically, it was the idea, we talked about what Europe was doing, right? Europe's basically carving out the entire world. Africa, remember, Spain controls, why does the majority of South and Latin America speak Spanish and Portuguese? Who controlled them at one point? Spain, right? Europe is controlling Southeast Asia, trying to get their hand in the market in China, right? This idea of Monroe Doctrine was that Europe, step off, you can have the rest of the world. This is our neighborhood. We should be the big dog here. This is our backyard. You guys don't have any business over here. This is going to be our sphere of influence. If we're going to have colonies or control the market, if anybody is, it's going to be us. So that's that idea of Monroe Doctrine. Manifest Destiny was an idea that the United States should go from coast to coast, that all this was God's will for the United States to have. Obviously it gave no regard to the Native Americans that already lived there, but that was the idea, and Teddy embraced this. All right. And he's actually going to, so while he actively thinks we should have a war, he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating a peace between Russia and Japan later on into his presidency. All right. Early life. So he's born in New York City into a somewhat wealthy family, not crazy rich, but his dad's a successful business and a philanthropist, meaning he gives a lot of money back to the people, right? He sponsors charities and invests in the community. This is going to stick with Teddy. He's, his father was the most important figure in his life. He's going to learn from him. And later on, Teddy's going to take those ideas that you should give back and bring them into his presidency. Okay. But he's a sickly, weak little kid, right? He's got a heart condition. He's got asthma. He's kind of like a little runt. And his father's going to say to him, you have the mind, but not the body. You must build the body. And this is what he's going to do. He is going to just immerse himself in outside and sports. And he's going to turn himself. It's like that high school movie where the little wimpy kid turns into the, quarterback or whatever. He attends Harvard University. He's going to be involved in rowing. He's going to be a boxer. There's actually stories of him as governor boxing people that opposed him. His father's going to die in 1978, though, while he's still at Harvard. And it's going to kind of rattle him for a little bit. He doesn't know what direction he's going to go. He tries to go to law school. He realizes he doesn't really like law. He wants to kind of be in politics. He's very interested in the Navy, this is a little bit of foreshadowing, because while he just is in law school, like 22, he's going to write his first book about the War of 1812 and the naval side of it. Okay. So we're going to see this interest in the Navy come out later in his career. So he says, law school's not for me. I'm going to get into politics, right? So he's from New York. He's elected to the district assembly, which is kind of like, the House of Representatives almost. He's going to get reelected twice. People are going to love him. He attacks corruption. He tries to weed out these people that are, taking bribes or participating in nepotism, right? Where you give jobs to your family members, and cronyism, where you give jobs to your friends. He doesn't like any of that. So he gets married at 22. He has his first child. His wife dies 2 days after childbirth, right? Like, how messed up is that? The dude's 24, 23 years old. His wife dies. His mom dies on the same day as his wife dies. So here he is, his world's upside down. He's got this little baby. He doesn't know what to do. He ends up quitting his job. He said, the light has gone out of my life, right? As rightfully so. I don't even want to think about where I'd be. So what he does is he gives his baby to his sister. Sister takes care of it, and he basically runs off to the Midwest, to the Dakota Badlands, which is a territory at this point, to play cowboy, just to get back into nature and kind of clear his head. But he's going to do that for 3 years. When his dad died, he did leave him money. He left him about 100 or like $1.5 million in today's money. So he goes out there and he buys a ranch. He describes it as, it looks how Poe sounds, Edgar Allan Poe. So he wants to basically be a cowboy. But remember, dude, this guy went to Harvard, right? When you think of somebody that goes to Harvard University, do you think of cowboy or tough guy? Nah, you kind of think of like Easterner, rich boy, prim and proper. He wears glasses. He speaks proper English. He's got a New York accent. And now he's out there with all these cowboys and people that have like lived on the range and eat beans out of a pot and wear the same pair of shoes like for a year in a row. And they're like, no, get out of here. You're tenderfoot, you're soft, keep it moving. But he doesn't give up. He learns how to ride. He learns how to shoot. And eventually these people embrace him because of his sheer determination. And he like becomes a legit rancher cowboy. And you couldn't think of a more stark contrast in lifestyles between, Eastern politician who's born into wealth and attends Ivy League colleges, like the best college in the country, going to living home on the range, So like I said, his Eastern mannerisms alienate him and he doesn't fit in loosely, but he holds his own and becomes the man he would be. And eventually he gets embraced by these people. Okay. All right, so he moves back east 3 years later and marries a friend he grew up with, like a girlfriend he grew up with, his childhood sweetheart, Edith Carroll, in 1886. They end up having 5 kids together. Edith adopts Alice, the daughter from his first wife. They end up butting heads a lot through the presidency, but Alice is going to be a pretty strong advisor in Teddy's ear throughout his career. He gets back into politics. He runs for mayor, but loses. So at this point, he's still interested in politics. He doesn't know what to do. So he starts campaigning for then presidential candidate Benjamin Harrison. Okay. He is a charismatic speaker. People eat him up. They hang on his words. He can write a terrific speech. He knows how to command a crowd, right? And he just crushes it for Harrison. Harrison ends up getting elected and doesn't forget about Teddy. He appoints him to the Civil Service Commission, which is basically a federal organization that's used to kind of weed out corruption. And remember, we talked about nepotism. What's nepotism again? If I got this job based on nepotism, who gave me the job? Who do you give the job to in nepotism? All right, I'll give you another. Who do you, if you give a job based on cronyism, who are you giving jobs to? Are you giving jobs based on merit, like to the most qualified people? Friends or family? Jaylene, good job. Friends or family, you got it. So nepotism is if I give job, like if I hire my brother to, if I'm the CEO of the school and I hire my brother to be a teacher, that's nepotism. If I hire my best friend to be a teacher at the school, that's cronyism. It doesn't have to do with qualifications. It has to do with personal connections. Is that a proper thing to do? If you're a government official, is that doing the best thing for the people you're supposed to be serving? No. Good job, Tyler. Guys, I need you on camera, please, and thank you. All right, so he's gonna that's his job now, is to weed that stuff out. Okay. And the mayor of New York, who he lost to, is going to take notice of this. I mean, the mayor who beat him out is going to see like what a presence this is and appoint him to the police chief commissioner. Now, is Teddy qualified to be a cop? Not necessarily, but he's not really a cop. He's just like an overseer to clean up the New York Police Department, right? And he's not using conventional means, right? Like up until this point, you didn't need to know how to read or write to be a cop. You would get your own gun. It was a very corrupt system, right? It was, bribes here and there. It was not. If you ever want to see it, watch the movie Gangs of New York. Has anybody ever seen that? It's actually a good movie. Got Daniel Day-Lewis and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's about like New York City in the late 1800s and just how corrupt and vile. It shows like the complete, it's during the Civil War. It shows like racism in the North. It shows police corruption, political corruption, horrible, how terrible it is for immigrants, how vile living conditions are in the poor parts of the city. It's a very good piece. I wish I could show it to you guys. It's got some bad words. Maybe ask your mom or dad first, because I know you guys don't know any bad words, right? All right, and he's going to work with our boy Jacob Riis, right? We all remember Jacob Riis, right? Remember I showed you that video of how the other half lives? He's that photographer, that Danish photographer, journalist, who's called a muckraker, and he's going to expose just how desolate the conditions in New York City are. And Jacob Riis and Teddy Roosevelt are going to kind of become buddies. So now Teddy Roosevelt is really embraced by the media. And this guy becomes like a fan favorite of the media, right? And Teddy's going to do all these weird things. He's going to rewrite what it means to be able to be a cop. You need to read and write. You need to, you get a standard issue gun. Teddy Roosevelt's going to dress up in disguises and walk through the streets of New York at night to see if he catches cops sleeping or cops, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he's getting more buzz. All right, now William McKinley, the 25th president, is in office. He is going to promote Teddy from police commissioner in New York City to assistant secretary of the Navy, the number 2 dude in charge of the Navy. Big, big, big leap, right? And Teddy loves this because he knows the Navy, he loves the Navy. And in 1889, the USS Maine is going to explode. The USS Maine is a warship that the United States has over in Cuba, right? Cuba is still controlled by Spain. Spain's empire was once the biggest on earth, now is in vast decline. Spain still controls Cuba, Puerto Rico, a couple little other islands. Somehow it has the Philippines still out in the Pacific, right near China, and a little tiny island, Guam, okay? So the USS Maine is in Havana Harbor, and it's going to explode. journalism is the only way people get their news, right? And there's this thing called yellow journalism that comes after muckraking, right? And that's going to basically be a cry for war, right? They're going to say Spain torpedoed the USS Maine. Spain's, needs to be stopped. Basically, it's going to be calling for a declaration of war, right? This is a newspaper. So they later find out it wasn't the Spanish. It was just the engine blew up, right? But 170 sailors are going to die and somebody needs to pay, right? So it's going to be Spain. So Teddy Roosevelt is Assistant Secretary of the Navy at this point. His boss, John Long, took the day off. I don't know, had a dentist appointment or something, took the day off. So what does Teddy do? Teddy gets on the phone. There's no phones back then, but he gets on there and he starts sending messages. Yo, deploy the fleet. Let's go. It's on. And basically he's going to tell Admiral Dewey out in the Pacific to go and basically get ready to take the Spanish fleet in the Philippines, right? We had, where were they? Taiwan, I think they were stationed. But basically he says, yo, let's go, get down there, and there's gonna be the battle in Manila Bay, and they're just gonna wipe out the Spanish fleet big time. And McKinley and Long are like, yo, Teddy, what are you doing? This isn't your job. You got to run it up the chain of command. Like follow your process. Did Teddy follow his process? No, not at all. So the Philippines are done. Spain is defeated in the Pacific, but there's still the Caribbean. So what's Teddy going to do? Is he going to stay as Navy? No, he's going to quit his job so he can join the Army. He's 39 years old at this point. Anybody know this song?
Oh, no, that's a bravo. Sing it. Stop.
No?
Say what?
Yo, Rough Riders, DMX. All right, so he's going to form a cavalry unit of volunteers called the Rough Riders. Cavalry is mounted horsemen, right? And basically, it's going to be like the most diverse fighting force ever. It's going to be his cowboy buddies from the Dakotas. It's going to be athletes that he boxed with and rode with and that played football. It's going to be his Harvard buddies. It's going to be politicians. It's going to be Native Americans. It's going to be cops. It's going to be politicians. Eventually, partial pieces of Buffalo soldiers, which are black soldiers, are going to be under his command. It is going to be the most diverse fighting force probably seen up until this point, okay? So they assemble in Texas and train for 2 months. Then they're going to move down to Miami to get ready to go, okay? I know it's kind of hard to say. So Florida, here's Cuba. Now there's a problem with the ships, though, and they can't load the horses, and only about half the men. So he's got 2,000 soldiers fighting under him, but only half can make it to Cuba, and none of the horses. So now they're not a cavalry unit anymore. They're just a simple infantry unit, right? But you know what he makes sure who can get on? All his photographer buddies in the press, and they're all going to make sure they go down to Cuba with him. All right, so basically, I'm not going to get into the battle details, but there's going to be the Battle of San Juan Hill and Kettle Hill, and basically he's going to, the Spanish have the numbers, they got more numbers, and they've got the high ground. Teddy Roosevelt doesn't care. He's gentleman charge, and they're going to charge up this hill. They're going to suffer about 25% casualties, meaning like 25% of their 1,000 were killed or wounded, but he's still going to take the hill and be like the hero of the war, and everybody's going to love him. And of course, the journalists are right there to see it and to capture it all. And there's my man TR with his Rough Riders after victory and taking San Juan Hill Heights. All right, I'm going to get through this real quick. All right, he comes back to New York. Remember, New York is very corrupt. The state is controlled by this guy, Thomas Platt. He's basically the boss, okay? Boss Tweed runs New York City. Platt runs New York State. And you can see Platt's got all these politicians. He just sews them together into a big tapestry to do his bidding, right? It's corruption, there's cronyism, and nepotism, right? The party says, we got to get Teddy Roosevelt back on the scene. This is the dude. Platt's very nervous because he doesn't think he can control Teddy. Teddy says, I'll play ball, I'll be cool. Platt says, okay, make sure, you toe the line and do what the party wants you to do. So he's going to put him up as governor of New York, decked out in his cavalry uniform, war hero, and Teddy's going to win, but only by a slight margin. And instantly He's going to make Platt regret his decision. He's going to start cleaning up the state. He's going to start protecting the environment, meaning like environmental standards. Remember, these big companies and factories just can pollute, and it doesn't matter. Teddy's going to start changing that. He's going to work with labor groups. He's going to start looking out for the workers, not the big corporations. And this is a problem to the old school Republican Party because they are more interested in the interests of the big corporations. Teddy's looking out for the small guys. Platt is like, we made the wrong decision. We should have never made this guy mayor or governor. How can we stop this? Oh, I know. We'll make him the vice president. That has no power, right? So McKinley is the president in 1896, right? His vice president dies in office. So now there's no vice president, right? So when it comes time for McKinley to go for his second term, they're like, let's put Teddy Roosevelt in there, right? The vice president doesn't do anything. He just sits there in a corner, waits for him, to take a photo, and that's all he does, right? So they're like, that's a perfect plan to kill him. So the Republicans get together, they vote on nominating the next vice president, and it's all but one for Teddy Roosevelt. Only one person votes against Teddy Roosevelt for vice president. Who do you think that person is? Come on, we're almost done, guys. Somebody tell me who votes to not make Teddy Roosevelt the vice president and kill all his power and take away Teddy Roosevelt's power. Who do you think votes no? I'll give you a clue. Teddy Roosevelt is allowed to vote in this. Does anybody think it might be Teddy Roosevelt? All right, it's Teddy Roosevelt. Everybody votes to make Teddy Roosevelt the president except Teddy Roosevelt. So I don't know if you guys can see this. This is a political cartoon one of my kids when I was student teaching a million years ago did. Look, there's Teddy Roosevelt, right? He's got his power. He's moving, stomping on the U.S. He's got his Rough Rider outfit on. There's Boss Platt. That bucket of water represents the vice presidency, and he's going to dump it on Teddy to kill the power, right? When that kid did that, I was so happy. I still hang it on my wall a million years later, okay? We're going to be doing a political cartoon down the road. We're not getting into that today, but put that on your radar, all right? All right. So, and basically, and Teddy Roosevelt receives all the votes but his own. And this guy, Mark Hanna, who's another political boss, says the only thing that stands between that madman and the White House is a bullet. And you know what's going to happen 8 months later? McKinley's going to get assassinated, and Teddy Roosevelt's going to be the president of the United States, and the old school Republican Party isn't going to be able to do anything about it, okay? We will talk about Teddy Roosevelt as a president probably next Tuesday or Thursday. There is a Google Doc on Classroom I need you guys to fill out. It's a simple, short answer. It's 2 questions about what you think the most interesting fact was, and then what helped him become president, which of his experiences, okay? All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow morning in GGI. Make sure you get that Apex work turned in. Make sure you get onto Google Classroom right now and fill that out. It won't take you more than 2 minutes, all right? Have a fantastic day, guys.